So if you are signing in and you can hear me, you're in great shape. Just getting everything hooked up here. So good to see you. All right. Well, first off, let me welcome you today to our webinar. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, so I'm in a hotel room. So that's why you've got my beautiful, beautiful plugs behind me. This is the best in a hotel room. So welcome. So it's good to have you. I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to talk today and to be able to do the webinar live. And so today we're going to be talking about successfully running hybrid projects. And so I know many of you are doing this day in and day out. You're running some form of hybrid. And so we're going to talk about it today. I just finished writing a 2-day seminar about this, and I started looking at a lot of different things, and it's from different bits and pieces that many of you have verbalized about what was happening with some of the hybrids and different things like this. And so I've designed a course that's a little bit more broad than probably any of you are having to deal with your hybrids. And so we're going to look at pieces of it today. So I hope it brings you some help and some encouragement as you get ready to do this. Well, let's start off with our definition of hybrid, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So hybrid project management combines both traditional and agile methods to create value for the customer. It can include a combination of methodologies, a combination of tools, processes, and approaches. Also, any of these can become a hybrid if they will assist in creating success. Now, depending on who you read out here about hybrid or who you look at, many times this is where everybody seems to stop, is that we're using some agile, we're using some traditional, and that's hybrid. The problem is that you can use hybrid, agile, and traditional together, and yet still run across a lot of other problems, and because other areas are not hybrid and working efficiently for you. And so I've got some of that built in today for us to talk about, because there's some support processes and support tools that you need probably in your hybrid situation. So a little bit later, about midway, when we get into that, just kind of look at your situation and see if some of these support tools and support processes wouldn't help your situation in being able to run a more effective and efficient type of hybrid situation. So in defining hybrid also, hybrid can run in a sequence, it can run in parallel in traditional or agile projects. So you could have an agile project running pieces of it in a very traditional manner. You could have a traditional project running agile in a handful of places in it as well. Hybrid blends the methods from the beginning of the project and takes action to spell out what will and will not be used in the project. Hybrid projects can be hybrid with traditional and agile backgrounds. Now, the reason I guess I'm so emphatic about this is because sometimes people have pigeonholed their form of agile over here, their form of hybrid over here, and they're just using it over in their agile situation, not thinking that this could also be used over on the traditional side, and not thinking that there's more to this than just because we run one section hybrid or traditional. And so as we look at these pieces, look and see, is there not something that you're going to be able to expand a little bit? The difference or the preference depends on the goals of the project and also of the customer. And as we look at some of these other things, it depends on your management. It's going to depend on your culture. It's going to depend on the maturity level or the knowledge of the team that you have. All of that's going to play a role on how hybrid you can be. And here's the other thing. Just because one project runs hybrid in a certain way does not mean that the next project is going to run exactly that same way. It might be a totally different type of hybrid and a culture for that. Now, many of you already know this probably, but let's start off with this. There is actually a hybrid manifesto that has been created, and it has been out for a few years. And so here is the hybrid manifesto. So consider the timing, skills, perspectives, and feelings of individuals. Create a secure environment to allow transparency and freedom in communication. Define indicators that reflect the team's performance and agreed results. Determine a management structure, team, and leadership style appropriate to the context. Now, as you read the hybrid manifesto, you can see this has a similarities to other manifestos you maybe have read, such as Agile or such as anything that you might have read in other types of tools and techniques. But the hybrid manifesto is looking at the situation of how can we blend some of these tools, techniques, and processes together for value, not just because we want to do it, but for the purpose purpose of bringing value to that customer. And then let me read the rest of it. Balance expectations and engage key stakeholders. Choose the best combination of approaches to achieve the result. Establish a continuous flow of value delivery. Be prepared to quickly manage learning changes and risk, considering a systematic view, and managing iteratively to facilitate learning and allow adaptations. Okay, so as you read these last half of hybrid, this is the piece that I got excited about when we started writing the seminar, because so many times since we pigeonhole hybrid in some cases, and maybe yours is different, but many people do, we'll pigeonhole and do just a few things hybrid, such as my programmers work hybrid, but everything else is traditional. And that could be hybrid, but that might not be hybrid enough to be able to get the value that you really want out of it. And the customization of what's going to be hybrid and not going to be hybrid is going to be the call of the project manager, the team, and management, or the PMO, as you look to try to work some of these things together. And so, so as we present this in a moment, that's really a good broad perspective that we're going to present on hybrid. So what makes a project hybrid? I'm going to show you this graphic 2 times in this program. And the reason is because I think this is going to have some of the characteristics that's going to help you in the hybrid you're running. So look at the top. So resource authority. Who has authority over the resources? Of course, in traditional, sometimes the resources authority is controlled by management. In Agile, a lot of times the team has authority to be able to do and say and make decisions in the project. But I want you to see the totality of this, because this is really what the course is really built off of, is the idea of, do we need to adjust all of these different tools or processes to be more hybrid than what they are right now? They're very traditional maybe right now, but we need more flexibility. So resource authority. What about communication? The way we communicate in traditional might be totally different than Agile. Do we need a blend of those 2 types of communication? Authority for decisions. Who gets to make the decision? So is it the team, or is it the project manager? Is it PMO? And that does there need to be a blend? Creation of the schedule. Who's creating the schedule? And you say, well, the project manager. Well, if you have a project manager, maybe. But in many of your situations, you probably or might not have a project manager. You might be a technical lead who's running this whole entire piece of it as well. So that might have to be a hybrid. What about creation of the budget? Well, management creates the budget. Many of you absolutely, it's top-down creation of the budget, and maybe little if any feedback going up. Some of you have full authority to create that budget. So that might need to be a hybrid type situation. What about contractors? How we use the contractors and how we get contractors to report. That might be something that has to be a little bit more hybrid. What about our team? Our team, how much authority they have, how much education do they have, how many decisions can they make, can they not make? Maybe that has to be a little bit more hybrid. We all know that in the Agile environment, perfect Agile, you'd co-locate everybody. But many of you I know can't do that, because you've got people working on multiple projects, and people are working in multiple places in the world sometimes, but definitely in different buildings. And so co-location doesn't necessarily fit. So that's a little bit of a hybrid situation. Change control. Do we have change control? Do we not have change control? Some of our Agile methodologies say no changes after the iteration or the sprint begins. In traditional, it's very much command and control for change control. What about estimating? How do we get our estimates? That might need to be a hybrid type situation. What about planning? That might need to be a hybrid situation. What about the methodology overall? That might need to be hybrid, meaning that this hybrid methodology might be totally different in this project than what we do in the other. So as you can see from this slide, this is one of the first slides that I built for this 2-day course, was because a lot of what we're having trouble with is not just that we're trying to do a little bit of Agile in a traditional environment, or a little bit of traditional in an Agile environment. It's because of some of these other things that we need to be able to support that type of decision making. So let's walk through pieces of this. So let's talk about the hybrid theory. A lot of things make a difference in hybrid, as you already know. And so the organizational culture, let's start there, because that's probably one of the biggest. Some of you are working with clients that have very traditional top-down culture. Now, that top-down culture fits very well for the traditional project manager, or I'm sorry, for the traditional project, but sometimes struggles if you're trying to bring an agile methodology or Scrum in to be able to do pieces of this. And so that culture has to have some flexibility in order for it to adjust to hybrid. It can't just be that we're allowed to be able to run an agile or a Scrum course or Scrum methodologies. There's got to be more than just the allowance of that, because that culture is going to have to do things and function a little differently. Individual and team authority seems to be one of the bigger pieces. So how much authority are we going to allow the team to make? Do we allow them to make most of the decisions? Obviously, they're not setting strategic goals because that's not their role and responsibility. But the decisions they're making could sure support those strategic goals and be able to run those projects in a hybrid manner. So individual and team authority might make a difference. Project methodology. Are you a project shop that looks at traditional project management and only traditional project management, and you almost scorn at the possibility of agile? Boy, don't hold your breath, because a lot of us were in that same situation for years, and all of a sudden you start realizing we've got to learn how to use some agile methodologies. Some are absolutely needed in our situation because the traditional is struggling with some of this. And then worker location. Are you really going to relocate all your workers and co-locate them to one place? If you can and are doing that or wanting to do that, see, that might make a totally difference in how you're going to run hybrid projects in someone else. Many of you will never do worker location because people are all over the world or all over the state or all over the country, and you're never going to do that piece. And so that's going to dictate how you do certain types of hybrid. So why should you even consider hybrid project management? Well, first off, it allows a customized approach for project completion. No longer is one size designed to fit each project. And this is one of the reasons why I know many of you are already trying to work with this, is because you need that customized approach. You need it to be able to fit what it is the customer needs to do or wants to do. And you've got to have certain set of tools that maybe you don't have in one of the other, in Agile or in traditional alone. Also, it creates continuous improvement mindset for both the project methodology and the organization as a whole. How can we get better? How can we evolve? And so those organizations who are not wanting to look at any other possibilities other than traditional, they will struggle in the future as more technology comes down the pipeline and as more problem-solving initiatives happen and continuous improvement happens. They're going to find themselves having to adjust a little bit. It also adapts to the current needs, which include making changes as needed. Your workers need to be able to do things in Agile. Maybe not everything, obviously, but they need to be able to have that tool set to be able to work in those areas. It also frees up the stakeholders to use whatever method, tools, processes works best for the style of project. No longer are we taking a project and putting it into a methodology. We are now taking a project and we are adjusting that methodology to what's going to be most successful for that project. And in order to do that, your workers have to be trained in the Agile methodologies and in the traditional so that they can blend those together in a hybrid kind of setting. It also creates an atmosphere of innovation within the organization, the team. They have more tools than they have right now. And of course, a lot of times people will say, well, I don't like that because I like what we're doing. Are you successful? Are you coming in on time? Are you coming in on budget? Does it do what you told the customer it would do? Is the customer happy? If all those things you're hitting 100% on all those things and it's just blowing and going in that direction, you maybe don't need hybrid. But most of us struggle on these type of projects. And so that's one of the reasons why we have to look at this. Now, I thought this would be good for you to see because we make a lot of assumptions about hybrid and traditional. This is from 2018. This was the newest piece of research I could find, but I thought this would be good for you to see. Percentage and types of project management. So in the blue, this is predictive. Now, you know, predictive is traditional. Okay, so we all know what that is. That's command and control. Everything's going to run on time. We've got a schedule. We've got a budget. Well, let me back up. Everything's supposed to run on time, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way. 47% of all the projects out there are traditional. Then you'll notice that Agile, 23% are Agile, and people reported in 2018 that 23% were hybrid. And I wonder if it's even higher than that now because people are starting to pull those methodologies together. And then 7% are other. And I'm not real sure what the other is if they don't know what they do. And if not, if they're in that 7% of saying, I don't know what we do, we've all been there. You think, I don't know what we're doing on this thing. And so that's open-ended. But my point is 23% is Agile, 23% is hybrid, and then 47% is predictive. predictive. And there are some predictive projects that are going to stay predictive regardless of what we talk about. But I think you're going to continue to see hybrid continue to grow. So this is what we're looking at here. Many will look at the methodology and the requirements, and we do traditional. And nothing wrong with traditional. This isn't a slam on Agile or traditional. It's an encouragement to be able to take the pieces of both when needed and create your own. But in traditional, we know that the methodology is very clear. The requirements are very clear. We know the requirements up front. That's why we run traditional so many times. But what happens when those requirements are not coming in up front? What happens when those requirements are evolving, or there's just some decisions that haven't been made yet? And so then a lot of times people are going into that aspect of hybrid, which is going to be right in between there. And then of course the third is going to be Agile, which allows the most flexibility. So hybrid takes the capability of some of the things in Agile and some of the things in traditional, and it marries them together for the benefit of that one project. Now I say it again, that one project, which means that the next project, the way you marry, if you're going to run a hybrid project, the way you marry Agile and traditional together might be a little bit different because of that project. And the next one would be a little bit different. And what I'm trying to say is that the customization of this is going to be the key of being able to merge all of this together. So let's talk about some of the effects on organizational culture. I think this is one of the biggest struggles that we have, is trying to be able to bring organizational culture together to support hybrid. Many of you who are doing traditional projects for the most part, and you're trying to do a hybrid project, you trip over culture, because this is the way they've always done it. These are the rules, the regulations, even measurements and metrics are one of those things that's very, very difficult. So here's some ideas on culture. So areas where organizational culture is influenced, and you have to look at it, is starting off with decision making. Who makes that decision? Now, in an Agile situation, the team is driving and executing like crazy. In traditional, the project manager has the control, and then management a lot of times will be making some of those decisions. But decision making is moved to the team level rather than at an executive or management level. And of course, why is that? Once again, if we can get it in our mind that the goal for even hybrid is like Agile, you want execution. You want to get that piece of the project done. You want to be able to get value to that customer. What about reporting? This is going to connect to communication. So reporting is conducted with a frequency which allows less meetings, but more access if emergency or crisis happens. And so sometimes our meetings are not very productive in traditional. But even, let's be honest, sometimes our meetings are not very productive in Agile. You do a 15-minute stand-up meeting, which can be very productive, but sometimes it's not. And you have other meetings that might not be as productive. So how can we communicate the right stuff to the right people and keep everybody happy, but yet I'm running a hybrid project? And there's no one who can tell you that except for you, who's in the middle of that culture, realizing management has to have these 3 types of calculations because that's what's part of their reporting. And so here's how I'm going to get those produced for them, even though it doesn't necessarily help us in this particular project. And then the third part is going to be trust. How are we going to be able to trust and verify the team's making good decisions and following through by holding everyone accountable? And that will take time throughout the project, and yet we're bouncing from project to project. So this one is a hybrid project, and the one you're going to work on next week might actually be traditional while you're still working on a hybrid project. And so we've got to have that versatility to be able to take the hybrid hat off. And so in other words, now I'm in traditional, project managers running this one. Now I'm in hybrid, then it's going to be a blend of some is going to be teams, some of it will be management who will be making those decisions. And then the next one, I'm working on an Agile project. We have almost full power at the team level. So many of you actually have all 3 hats that you're having to wear even now as we talk about that. So let's look also at the effects on individual and team authority. We know that's a huge change and shift. So let's look at this. So authority and control are part of project management. What you're trying to do is not say all authority is any place all the time. You're trying to say, based on this project and based on what we need for this project, here's where the authority is for the team. Here's where the authority is for each individual, so that we can make the right decisions and not get bogged down in needless meetings and waiting for somebody to make a decision. So authority and control are part of it. The difference is, can the control be given to a responsible team member, or is a project manager required to make every one of these decisions? Traditional, the project manager might be the person. Agile, the team might be the group that's doing it. In hybrid, it might be a person or a group that's doing it, because which one's the right the right mix to be able to make that. So hybrid projects can allow team members to have the authority to complete project work, make decisions without having the bureaucracy of a project manager, or really the bureaucracy of a sign-off is really what we're going for, to where we're not having to sign off on everything every time. And that doesn't mean we don't need sign-offs at time. Of course you do. But you don't have to have some of the silly stuff that we've all seen, silly sign-offs that just bog it down. You're waiting for 2 days for somebody to sign something. That gets a little crazy. All right, so let's determine which projects should be hybrid or traditional or agile even. So let's look at it like this. So since hybrid is a blend, and every project that is hybrid will basically almost have customization to it because of all these other support processes that we need, then it's going to be a project for hybrid is going to have certain types of characteristics. So let's go through this. Project methodology should be chosen based on an anticipation of success. Which one of these methodologies, traditional, agile, or hybrid, is going to bring the most success for this project? That's what you need. Anything less than that means that we've got a project that's in a methodology that's out of step, and that's what you're not wanting to have happen. So not every project should be hybrid. Some of the people are wanting to have hybrid projects is silly to me. They want to do it just because it's new or just because it's different, and that's crazy. You don't want to build a building with a hybrid project. You're going to build a building with traditional project management. Why? It's command and control. You're building from past history. You're building from construction best practices. Of course, you don't need a hybrid project for that, or an agile project for that. So select the methodology which brings about the highest potential for success and supports the current organizational condition. Now, let me tell you what you could do. So we are building a huge building, and so a client some time ago was building a huge building. However, several of the things that were in that building was high tech, not high tech. And so the people who were doing that section of the project, and it was a large section of the project, they ran everything in a hybrid and agile way. Why was that? Because that fit that piece of the pie better. And so traditional built the building, but as far as these folks who were doing all the technology for that was going to be throughout this building and it was going to be run within the perimeters of this building, that was hybrid and agile. And so that's what we're talking about here. That makes the most sense for that piece there. Let's talk about hybrid effects on project methodology. Sometimes we feel like we've got to follow one methodology or the other, and I understand that. However, if you're honest, you're probably not following traditional project management 100%. And if you folks who are running the agile methodologies, you're not running it 100% agile either. And so what happens is that really you're kind of picking what to leave out on traditional. You're also picking what to leave out on agile. And we know hybrid's going to really be right here. It's going to be that blending of these two. So here's the thing, when you're looking at what you're leaving out on traditional or leaving out on agile, you're doing something similar to that for the hybrid purpose. You're making sure these are the processes we've got to have to make it work for hybrid because of reporting and communication and culture and environment, all those things, but you're doing it on purpose. You're making a purposeful decision on this project to leave these or include these, not just by happenstance. And that's what you're really trying desperately to do. Now, here's some statistics on projects that will support some of these ideas that I'm talking about. First off, PMI reported in 2020, 61% of the organizations provide project management training, while 47% have a clear career path for project professionals. And why is that important for us to understand? Because as project managers and also as executives in project management, we need to be providing some training to our people. For an example, you guys who are already tapped into our webinar, we've got all of our webinars on our main page. Why don't you do like some of the other people and use those webinars to train your people within that 50-minute setting from time to time? And so you get links to every one of these things. And so you have the right to be able to train your people. We have some people here in the United States, also in Canada, who literally they'll play the video and they will have a discussion about these certain topics. And so you've got access to every one of those on the front of our website. So go back to it and get it and download it and put it out there for your people and talk about it. And so it's only an hour, I know, and we haven't dealt with everything in that hour, but it does give you an opportunity to be able to take a look at that. So 61%. Also, project management professional certification holders will earn salaries that are 22% higher than those without a PMP. Now, this gives a PDU for everyone who signs in for our webinar, and we've done this to focus on the PMPs. But my goodness, there's a lot of people out here who don't have PMPs who are great project managers, and you've got a lot of team members who aren't qualified for a PMP, and this training would help them and help build them up. And if they choose to get a PMP down the road, awesome, that's really good. And then only 23% of the organizations use some type of project management software. Now, I'm not saying software has to be used in every situation, but many of you need some type of software to be able to facilitate the changes and the adjustments in that project. And so this allows you the capability of making a change instantaneously so that you can actually see what impact that's going to have on your project, on your budget, on your schedule, and those type of things. Now, evaluating the need for hybrid. Here are some questions to ask yourself. Maybe you've never considered hybrid, and listen, this thing's evolving like crazy. There's no real books out on hybrid that are really strong on Amazon. If you go and look, you'll find some articles that have some ideas, but most people who write about a hybrid, they're writing about it from one industry. And so in other words, if they are in the chemical engineering and they're using some type of hybrid, they write about it like everything has to be run from that culture of chemical engineering. And I think there's a fault there because we all have those different cultures. So here's some things. Number one, why will traditional project management not work in our setting? Now, I'm not saying it's 100% bad. I'm just saying, why is it that we're even considering hybrid for parts of those projects? Why is that? And that needs to be verbalized. And it's okay that those things are happening. Why will Agile project management not work in some of these settings? So if we look at it from an Agile standpoint, then what's happening that's causing Agile to be clumsy here? What areas of either methodology will experience struggles? And so just be honest. You're not slamming anything. You're just being honest. That's going to have trouble because of this. This is going to have trouble here. Now, it doesn't mean that any of these trouble issues that you would have from running Agile or running traditional will stay that way. That needs to be a discussion point with management. And will a hybrid methodology deliver more benefits to the customer and support the project better? And I think as you talk about this with management, with people in authority, with your PMO, whoever those authority pieces are, it allows you that opportunity to kind of flesh it out and consider more of this. Now, let's look at a hybrid methodology a little bit. So let me expose you to some of these. All right, so as you look at this, and so let me get my glasses on so I can see this. Okay, so let's look at traditional at the top. So traditional we all use. We'll start with a business case for the project. A lot of times it'll include funding, authorization, and then all of a sudden you'll have creation and approval of the charter. And you know that in the traditional sense that once the charter is finished, normally that is a project from that point on. Now your organization might do things a little bit different, but that's normally where it is. Then if you'll notice, the hybrid is all in the dotted line here in the middle. So we've got a lot of different pieces here. And so you'll notice we've got planning and execution, and then we've got handoff, and then another planning, execution, and then handoff. And of course, under each of these planning and execution, notice that we've got updating the Kanban board or a task board, whatever you want to call it, but it's Kanban or Scrum board. And so you're updating it so people can see visually what's going on with the project. Then you'll notice updating management I've got outside of Agile. Why? Because you might find yourself having to update management in the same old traditional way that you've had to do in the past, because that's the box that this thing has to fit in. And that's another hybrid piece that you just have to get those metrics so that management understands it. And so we follow that all the way through. And then of course you update the documentation. So this is one piece of this. Now let me show you what I'm talking about here. So let's go a little further here. So your business case determines the return on investment, feasibility of the project. Most of you have some type of business case mechanism, but business case is normally outside of the project. It's not part of what we would classify as really the project management. It's kind of like pre-project stuff to be able to get the funding and get approvals and determine whether or not this project should even be done. The second thing that you're looking at is the funding and authorization. Now that can go a lot of different ways. Many times that will happen in the charter. Many times it'll happen, the project manager and the team will make recommendations on what the budget and the schedule should be. But there has to, many of you have funding issues that you have to get taken care of early on, 18 months or 12 months ahead of time. So that's okay. It can fit in those situations. And then once the charter is signed, most of the time that's looked at as the document. It appoints a project manager if a project manager is going to be there, and it allows the project manager and selection of a team, and it has some form of budget. And you know, in PMI's world, that takes care of everything, because once the charter is signed, the project manager can spend the money on the project. And so those are all pieces. And then everything surrounded by the dash is hybrid. So it's not traditional. So the project manager, if you're going to use a project manager could plan the plan alone or involve the team. But the point is, all of that is going to be run with a planning, execute, and handoff, talking about getting that to the customer in that type of manner. And so it would be like that. So on the top part, you've got traditional. In the bottom part of how we're doing the actual project work, we have very much in a hybrid manner. And the reason it's hybrid is that, does it have components of Agile in it? Of course it does. These could be actually be run like iterations. But notice the reporting system at the bottom where you update management. That's outside of Agile, because that's not how you would normally update management in an Agile setting. And so in other words, that would be part of that hybrid piece. They need these type of metrics, so we generate those metrics for them. So you make the decision on what part is going to be or could be hybrid. And so planning's focused on short sprints or iterations, 2 to 8 weeks long. That's very much Agile. We all know that piece is. But the reporting piece, the funding piece might not be part of Agile and might not actually be part of the project. It might be something that is kind of pre-project information here. And then at the end of each sprint or iteration, there's that handoff to the customer. And then also the project manager updates the Kanban board of what's going on. And then of course, updates management with metrics. Now, let me show you another little comparison of this. So let's take the traditional here. And so we've got the authority, the control, the communication, the plan. Now we know what traditional is. We've worked traditional project management for a long time. If you look at Agile, Agile has some different components. For an example, it's a change atmosphere. What does that mean? It means that we have the flexibility to make changes. We're hitting a moving target. We're using a product owner, or we're using a customer who is reorganizing the features, functionality, or user stories that we need to implement. And so it's very much of a change environment. Look at the expertise of the team. The team's making a lot of the decisions. They're doing the estimating. They're giving a lot of the input. And then it's active communication. Co-location is one piece of it, where we're in the same room and we're able to talk face to face, but we have a lot of communication. No idea is a bad idea. We all are able to contribute. And then it's run in iterations so that we can do an iteration and hand off something to that customer. Then look at hybrid. Hybrid has that blend of those two. So you've got to look at authority. And authority for one project does not mean that you have that same authority in the next. You have to look at empowerment. You've empowered the team to do that. And communication, how we communicate in this project, totally different how we have to communicate in the next. And then training and coaching of the team might be totally different, because you're having to get your people up to a certain level of knowledge, depending on the project. And that will make a difference on how high on the knowledge. So traditional is command and control. The goal is to plan the project, deliver it at the end. So we all understand that. We deliver it all 100% at the end. And then Agile focuses on completing the features in order prescribed by the product owner. Work is completed in iterations ranging around 4 weeks long. And so we know that that's those handoffs to that customer. And so it's not perfect, but we're giving it something to that customer. And then hybrid blends the two of traditional and Agile, and adjusts authority levels, organizational culture, communication, and control of the schedule and budget, so that they have the capability to run their project as fast as possible and not necessarily have to use every process or every tool that we've used either in Agile or in traditional. Now, I threw this in. This is one of the more famous Agile sprints that are out here. You probably have seen this. And so you notice that they've got planning, and then requirements analysis and design, and is all part of pretty much waterfall. And then the bottom end of requirements analysis and design, they have initial project backlog. Now, you know your backlog is part of Agile, and that's going to be your features and functionality, your user stories. And so that's going to be part of your product backlog. But notice the dotted line here that Archer and Kaufman have done. They basically have just done the iteration planning, updating the project backlog, and defining the iterations. And so design, build, test, and partial UAT. So they're getting that unit out to the customer as quick as possible. And then they're reviewing the work of the software. So this is designed really for that software delivery, but you can Google this. This is one of the more famous hybrid type of approaches that's out. But I think the problem with this is, once again, not that this is wrong. It's not wrong at all, but it's not going to fit. And many of you have tried something like this, have struggled because you needed those support pieces. So let's go to another piece. So this is what we just talked about. So as we go back to this, and this is where we started, we go back to this looking at all these different pieces that we have to talk about with management. We have to have some decisions on how this is going to happen and what's needed. And that supports that hybrid mindset. And so it's not that battle royal of who's getting the time, who's making the decision on this whole thing. So let's talk now about the effects on the methodology. Hybrid can use any methodology as the foundation and make other changes which bring project success. So what does that mean? It means I can use Agile and then bring in traditional, or I can use traditional and bring in some Agile. The vast majority of what I've seen seems to be more traditional, bringing in Agile. And the reason for that probably is because Agile is the newer of the two methodologies. Lean project management works well in a hybrid environment because it limits the requirements to those which meets the scope and adds no enhancements. And so when you look at Lean, and we've talked about Lean in other webinars, that's one of the pieces that you're looking to see, how can we minimize our steps and be able to bring more value. And then hybrid allows versatility and adjustments without gaining permission to not follow a mandated process. And so once again, you're looking at, okay, we're locking people into strict steps they have to follow on every project. And so that's going to be a culture that's going to be one of the harder ones to deal with, because we've always followed these steps. We've always had these sign-offs. And those are some of the challenges and discussions that have to happen to make this work. Hybrid also focuses on what one needs for success. So if someone is not working, it is replaced with something which does work. And so you have to have that flexibility of, we're not locking this in saying, okay, these are our hybrid 7 steps. These are the 7 steps for this project. Does it work? Is it working? Also, measurements are focused on completed work, not partial. So that's part of Agile that we can include. Work must have a level of functionality before it's counted. That's part of Agile mindset. So you can bring that into function. And partial work is not counted because it does not bring any value. So all of these kind of components are very much some of the Agile influence that you could use in your methodology for hybrid. Now let's talk about the project manager. Project managers might have a role, they might not have a role. It depends on what you're wanting to do. So there's no one size fits all. So what if a management wants a project manager in hybrid? Do they have to have somebody in hybrid? They don't have to, but maybe you want a project manager in hybrid. So the project manager of a hybrid project must understand it's not like running a waterfall or a traditional plan-driven type of project. So they're not walking in, making every decision and running every meeting in most cases, because you've got a very high functioning team in a hybrid situation, which is going to be very similar to that of Agile. If management wants a project manager involved in Agile projects, this will require a different set of usable skills, because once again, in Agile is built not to have a project manager. So that's the reason why we're saying it might make a difference. You might have a hybrid project because you want that project manager there. So like for an example, and I just left this piece in here. This was one of the assessments that we would do in the 2-day hybrid project management course, but role adjustment in hybrid. So authority on a 1 to 8. Are we more like on the PM side, or are we going to be more on the team side? And that could change depending on the project. What about servant leadership? Same thing. What about management accountability? Same thing. What about reporting and status? All of those could be within that range of 1 to 8. It's more PM or more team as we look at this. Okay, so let's go to the team member then. What is their role in hybrid? Well, when we look at characteristics of team members in hybrid, they're going to have a lot of the characteristics that we're talking about in Agile, because you're wanting them to be have more input. You're wanting them to have more accountability. So execution focused. Compared to, if we're looking at traditional is we want to execute, but really traditional is more control focused. You're controlling that budget. You're controlling that scope. Where execution is much more the idea in hybrid, and it's also the idea really more so in Agile. Highly knowledgeable. So you're wanting team members who understand what's happening and can look at the outcomes and create those outcomes. Self-motivated, problem solver, flexible, ability to work remote or on site. And so once again, in Agile, we want everybody on site. In hybrid, we're going to have people scattered all over the place probably. A willingness to work alone. We'd like to have everybody on a team. And a lot of times we are on a team, but we're on a team this way, where I'm talking to you remotely. I'm talking to you through video conferencing. An active communicator. So in other words, if I don't know, I'm asking. I'm not waiting for someone to tell me. I'm figuring it out. I'm asking. I'm bringing up an issue that I see. I bring up a concern that I have, and all of that is supported. The focus is on productivity and also negotiation skills. Highly accountable. So in other words, if I make a decision, I'm accountable for that decision. And it's okay, because I want that level of accountability with what I'm doing. So here's what we're looking at with supporting team accountability. So if we're trying to build accountability into the team, it's going to require several different pieces: training, coaching, encouraging, empowering. All of those pieces have to be part of this. And so whether I'm management or the project manager or even team member to team member, we're going to have to do that with each person. And so we're going to see people make good decisions. Guess what, though? We're going to make some bad decisions too, and that's okay for being able to do this. So train the employees in every possible skill that they might need associated with that hybrid, and the hybrid skills they need in this one might be totally different than the next. So we've got to do something like that. And coaching involves making the suggestions, giving ideas, allowing the team to make the decision. That's a little bit of a mindset that project managers or other people might have. Also, when there are struggles or failures, the team needs encouragement, not blame. And that's sometimes difficult because some people are in that blame game. Who are we going to hold accountable? And so you're wanting to do that. And then empowering the team is felt if leadership does the other areas of support. We feel empowered because we've been trained, we've been coached, we've been encouraged, and that allows us to feel empowered to be able to move to the next to the next piece of work. And good or bad, we're in this thing together. Let's talk communication. Huge gap in what we are doing today in hybrid. So in this, let's break it apart here so that it's clearer to see. So percentage of synchronous and asynchronous communication. Now, synchronous is the same time of communication, same time, same person. What we're doing right now, live, this is synchronous. Asynchronous means I've got a video and you can watch the video later. And so there will be hundreds of people who watch our videos on webinars each month, and they are asynchronous. Why? Because they want the material, but they can't be here at 10 o'clock. So 5% of the synchronous would be, or 5% would be in person, 25% would be synchronous all at the same time, but 75% would be asynchronous. And so how can we communicate if we're not going to be there face to face and doing it at the same time? And that's usually the challenge, is how to do that. And that's the reason why videos have been such a high creation for project management. You can create a video of what you're thinking or of the presentation or of the meeting or whatever it is, and somebody has the capability of just tapping in on that. So communication in hybrid can require synchronous and asynchronous methods. Synchronous communication, everyone's communicating at the same time. Examples: in-person conversation, meetings, conference calls, instant messaging, and video calls. And sometimes people are all communicating in the same meeting at the same time, and you're not wanting that. And I know that, but that's what we're doing. We're trying to communicate and get it all out there at the same time. Weekly progress reports might even be something, and I just thought about this and threw this in for you in hybrid. So progress reports are customized for the project or the organization. So this would be information that maybe management needs. And you say, well, wait a second, we've got a Kanban board out here. Okay, good. Your team will use that. That's going to be fine, but you still might find yourself giving a weekly progress report to management. And you say, well, that's old style, that's traditional. Sure, but that might be the piece of hybrid that's needed to make this work. Characteristics of the progress report in hybrid could be adjusting the progress report with specific items required by management or the PMO. And that could be that block of metrics that we were talking about, that they have to fit their little thing. Determine how often the progress reports are created, and if they are presented verbally, or if it's good enough to send it to an email. Also establish a dashboard of the most important measurements that people want. And so this has to be something that's really kind of fleshed out on the front end of this, and who's responsible to get that metric, because that metric might not be something that's natural to the methodology that you have, it might not be natural right there. Next thing, emergency meetings. Can you have those crisis emergency meetings in hybrid? Yeah, of course you can. We try not to have those, but the point is that you might have to have that. So hybrid might experience crisis from time to time, and this requires emergency meetings for unexpected occurrences, immediate attention. Emergency meetings work best when the team is co-located, but with virtual means, you have the ability to have that emergency meeting just like you do any other time, whether you're there locally or not. All right, so you do this. So what's the steps for creating a customized hybrid methodology? So let me give you some ideas here, but every situation is going to be a little different. So investigate. Hybrid projects have options and degrees of usage from anything such as tools, techniques, methods, and processes. Determine what's been tried in the past and what you think will work for this project now. You're looking at one project. What is it going to take for this project? The next project comes along, you're looking for that project because you're trying to customize it. Then design, create a plan, and seek input from key stakeholders. Why? That's going to be team members, that's going to be PMO, that's going to be upper management. Because planning for a hybrid requires engagement from all major stakeholders, or somebody's going to get their feelings hurt, somebody's going to be in a tiz because you're doing something different. So the stakeholders have to remain open. This has maybe never been done in the past, and that's okay. That clumsiness, that clumsy feeling has to be part of this new culture here. And then verify with the team and management the plan and approach for the project. Team members must be ready to adjust to whatever changes in the plan to maintain that high velocity of execution. So what do we need to do to continue to get things out the door, to get things to the customer, and also communicate to the management and keep everybody happy with the calculations and the reporting. And then evaluate. Hybrid projects focus on execution, less bureaucracy. However, this does not mean no performance measurements or monitoring of project objectives and outcomes. So what's not working, let's make an adjustment. It's not a matter of throwing it all out. Let's tweak it and see if this doesn't work a little better for us. And that's what you're going to find yourself doing, is tweaking it, because you're going to adjust it a little bit. And then revise. Revision is necessary regardless of the kind of project one is completing. A revision might include the schedule, the budget, and approach of methodology, even the scope of work. All of those could include some type of revision in order to be able to pull off a hybrid project. When revising a plan, there must be consistent communication to everyone impacted with the changes and the adjustments. So in other words, if we're adjusting something, we're not adjusting it in our own little bubble here of team members. We've got to have management here. We've got to have the customer here and so forth, because that adjustment might need to take in their input or their insight into something that's happening. So let me show you a couple of other pieces of hybrid methodology, okay? Over on the left-hand side, you'll notice all the standard traditional types of the project. So but we're trying to run a hybrid. So we're going to need some type of agile connecting to the traditional from the left-hand side. And so that's what you'll see here. And so as you do this, we've got in the hybrid, or in the Scrum or Agile part, we've got product backlog, the sprint backlog, sprint execution, sprint demo, sprint retrospective, and then plan the next sprint. So you're doing all that cycle sprint by sprint by sprint. In the left-hand side, we took care of all the paperwork and all the mandated meetings. Guess what? In traditional. So I've got traditional running for all the paperwork and all the traditional meetings over here for sign-offs and approvals. And our team is running Scrum or Agile here in iterations all the way through. So how is the hybrid piece of this? For an example, the PM controls the product backlog, and they can control that if we have to have a PM. And also the PM could control the sprint backlog, what we're working on at each time. But we are merging the two of those together. And in this situation, we are also making this model use a project manager, but maybe you don't need one. All right, let me close this thing down here for just a second. So hybrid is I'm excited about it. I'm excited that we've already sold it. We're testing it in June. It's so hot off the press, it's still smoking. We are actually testing the first one in June with FAA out in Washington, D.C. So I'm excited about it. And so I hope you can pick up the excitement, and it has been beneficial to give you some things to think about. In an hour, you can't train you in everything, but at least think about other things that maybe have caused you some problems. So let me close out with a couple of things things here for you. Number one, and then I want to tell you about something new that's in the pipeline that I'm excited about, but it's not there yet. So number one, many of you have been hearing about us, the Mastermind PMP, free PMP Mastermind group. These are for people in your organization who are looking to get their PMP. This is five days. It's an hour a day for 5 days. And so they're part of this group. There's videos and we help them fill out their application. They have some vocab that they start learning. They take some practice tests, and we just start trying to kind of get their mind wrapped around what it is to pick up your PMP. So this is totally free to your people. They don't have to come to our boot camp to be able to do this. So they don't have to do that. They can go to any boot camp they want to, but it gives them an opportunity to help them fill out everything about that particular application and everything like this. They get discounts for coming to the boot camp, and we give away a free scholarship to a person in every mastermind group. So we've got 2 more left this year, May 23rd through 27th and September 12th through 16th. If you or anybody in your organization would benefit from this, we'll encourage you to be here. Now I just got a chat here. Let me see what this is. There's a few of you who didn't register directly with us for this webinar. This is from Kim. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. And if you want your PDU, contact Kim. And so if you look on your chat, Kim has sent you a chat for those of you who didn't register but are tapped in. Now let me talk about the hybrid that we're talking about right here. New course, it's ready to go. Hybrid project management, blending traditional and agile approaches for project success. We build activities around each of these different pieces to talk through what does a hybrid communication need that maybe is a little different than agile or traditional. And so it's a 2-day course. And so if you think you're interested in this, we don't have any more time between now and June, but from June to December, we do have some openings. We'd be able to get you set up for that. And so you just need to contact Wanda for that. And then April, next month, we're going to be doing the Kanban experience in project management. Many of you are using the Kanban board. And of course, that isn't one of the biggest tools, but I'm writing this right now. And so we're going to be talking about Kanban and project management and how to bring it all together. And so that's going to be on Friday, April 19th. So make sure if you want to be part of that, you've already signed up for this. But let me talk to you about one other piece, okay? So we talked about the free PMP mastermind groups. We've done all of that. And then here's our boot camps. And we have those online so that you can see the dates for those. We've got April, June, August, October, and December. All of these are virtual, and our passing rate for our virtual has been the same as our face-to-face. If any of you have 10 people, though, we will give you the group rate and bring a trainer on site to do your PMP. So if you have 10 people or more, we will put someone on site in addition to this. So that gives you an opportunity. So somebody said April 19th is not a Friday. Oh my goodness. I wrote that down this morning. Let me take a look real quick while I got you guys and see here. So April 19th is not a Friday. Oh, you're absolutely right. April 19th is not a Friday. It is a Tuesday because I'm speaking that Friday. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I did not catch that. I just wrote down Friday because I always do them on Friday. Now, let me hit the last little piece here so I can get you out of here. This is what I'm working on as well. And we're going to do a webinar on this. And so you'll get an invitation on this within a short period of time. It might be an extra webinar, okay? The webinar that I'm working on, for those of you who don't have your PMP, one of the challenges of the PMP is trying to analyze the exam questions and increase the possibility of passing, because there's usually 2 right answers or more that's on there, okay? So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to be doing a webinar on how to analyze PMP exam questions and increase the passing rate. And so I'm putting that together right now. We'll be looking at sample questions that we have purchased from PMI and that we will bring up, and we'll talk about what's happening there, what we want to point out to watch for. And so you'll get a special invitation for this down the road here. And so anybody you have that you think is going to need a PMP in the future, this would be a good one for them to be in. This is aligned with the new changes for the for the PMP that happened in January 2021. And it will allow you an opportunity to be able to dissect those questions, because those questions are so difficult so many times. All right, so we're down to the wire. Let me stop. Let me open this up for any questions that you might have about hybrid, or anything else will be fine. So any questions that you might have? All right. Well, let me thank you so much for being here this morning and being part of this. I appreciate so much that you're wanting to do this. You'll get a link and a message from Kim later today, so that you'll be able to download the video and show it to your people if you'd like to, if you think it'd bring benefit to you. And so it's just, I know this was fast. We were going 100 miles an hour. I was trying to get as much into this as possible just to kind of wet your whistle. So anyway, it's so good to see so many of you on the Zoom call with me, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And so you guys take care. Okay. Bye guys. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Keith.